Wednesday LinkedIn family. I am here with the amazing and beautiful Nashira Lynton, certified financial health mentor, who is here to give you 5 simple steps toward healing your relationship with money.
Yes.
Nashira, would you introduce yourself? Is there anything you would like to add to that?
Yes. Well, she said, my name is Nashira Lynton,
Yeah.
and I'm the owner of a company called Breaking Cycles, where we help purpose driven professionals achieve financial success so that they can live a life where their values inspire their financial choices. And just a few things she didn't mention about me is that I love coffee and tacos, just in case anyone ever wants to have some. Never together, always apart. And that's me, mom of 2 boys, graduate certificate in financial therapy for just a bit of education before we jump into our conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, love it. And you also didn't say 50%?
Yes, and so
Keep
I
these.
said I'm a mom of 2 boys,
Yeah.
and they define me as about 50% holy, 50% hood. But because we're here with Cassie and we want to be on our best behavior, so I'm going to show up as my best self.
Stop, you guys. Okay, thanks so much for joining, Chris. Denise, feel free to put your location where you're tuning in from in the comment section, also to make sure that this is actually live and you guys are seeing us here. I don't see it so far populated on my LinkedIn page right now, but Chris is on. He's always faithful to come on and support. Appreciate you, Chris. Um, and it's your girl, Cassandra. I'm a personal brand coach for Kingdom Entrepreneurs and the podcast host of the Grinding in Grace podcast, which, season 2 is coming up here soon in Q2. Excited to have you guys on this show. Thanks for joining us and spending an hour of your Wednesday afternoon, morning, depending on where you're tuning in from, with us. We got Corpus Christi, Chicago. Hey there, Oscar. Jacksonville, Texas, Chris, Brooklyn. So we got some family all over the US here tuning in. They're really excited to learn from Nashira. We're all in probably different financial spaces and places. We all have certain childhood experiences that have determined the way we view money and how we relate to money. So I think this is a very timely topic. Brenda, thanks for tuning in from Reno. Awesome. Yeah, well, we'll give you guys a few more minutes to just jump on. Sarah from Nigeria. Hello, Sarah. Thanks for joining us. So it's a global
Yeah.
event.
You didn't say where you were from.
I didn't say where I was from. You're right. Thank you, Nashira. We didn't say where we were from. I'm tuning in from Austin, Texas. It's a little hot and humid currently, but still a beautiful day. Nashira, what
Yeah,
about you?
I am tuning in from Houston, Texas, but I am born and raised in Brooklyn. So shout out to the Brooklynite.
Yes,
Yes.
Silesia Rice. Yeah,
Yeah.
shout out to your fellow Brooklynite. Awesome. So, Nashir, I want to get right into it. This is going to be a great session, like we mentioned. 5 simple steps toward healing your relationship with money. Um, First step.
Yeah, first step. So I love that, we're using the word simple because oftentimes when we talk about financial topics, they usually have to be really hard or challenging to make someone feel like they're making some sort of progress. But these are
Mm-hmm.
really just some simple tips and techniques that you can just walk away with today and give them a shot. So first step is really to take a diagnosis of what you're feeling around your finances. So you notice I'm not saying go look at your finances. I mean, actually just take a diagnosis and look at what's going on with you internally about your finances. Just to give you an example, when you're taking a diagnosis, think about how you feel when it comes to your money situation. Are you frustrated? Are you starting to
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of arguments around money, maybe perhaps with a spouse or a family member? start thinking about what's going on internally. So most of us, for those of you on the call who are entrepreneurs, sorry for
Mhm.
the background noise. There's some landscaping going on.
I couldn't hear too much, so you're good.
So for those of you on the call who are entrepreneurs, you may know what it's like, the fluctuation of income and what that does for you, right? How does that make you actually feel?
Mhm.
So you want to make sure that you do a diagnosis and take into account all those things. Um, so sorry.
That's actually perfect. That's perfect, Nashir, because I'd love for our audience to drop any comments. Like, how are you currently feeling internally about money? Do you feel like great about it? You have an awesome relationship with money and it's coming to you, it's in abundance and there's no blockage there. Like, what is your current internal diagnosis? Like, Nashira, if you were to, we're talking to a potential our client right now, what would you ask them to help do a self-diagnosis of where they're at with their finances?
So I have myself on mute just to kind
I,
of.
Thank you. That's good.
Um, one of the things that people would come to me, they would say, let's say, for example, they may not be saving as much as they would like. They would come and they would say, oh my gosh, like I'm not saving. And they would think that that's exactly what they want help around. But after we talk and we go a little bit deeper, what they would find is that the frustration that they have around maybe perhaps their overall financial
Hmm.
goals. And so thinking about it like this, I'm not saving. And then you think about for not having that for so long, maybe perhaps you've walked away from a job and you haven't had any income coming in.
Hmm.
What is that making you feel like? Maybe perhaps it's frustration, maybe it's anger,
Hmm.
disappointed. So you want to start to name what you're feeling around your finances because
Hmm.
this would actually help you determine what
Hmm.
the real financial goals are, despite maybe perhaps I'm saving 1,000 or 500. So just want to start naming the actual feelings around what's going on in your finances overall.
Hmm. Wow, that's great. So step one, name what you're feeling.
Yeah. So name what you're feeling around your finances. And even if these are good feelings, sometimes good situations, maybe perhaps you landed a new job and you have the income, or maybe you landed, a handful of clients. And so you got some new contracts coming in. And just because it's good, it doesn't mean that it doesn't cause financial stress. And so maybe
Mm.
you're stressed about you have no idea what to do next around, or maybe you got this influx of income, you have no financial plan, and that's what's causing you to have some frustration, some financial stress. And so it's naming those feelings of what's going on. And then that takes us into step number 2, which is to actually then take an account of what you owe and what you own. So that's the simple way to start getting an idea of what you have going on in your finances from the external side. So we talked about the internal side, naming what you're feeling and what's going on around your finances internally. And now it's time to take an account of what's going on the external side. So knowing what you owe, what you own is a great way to start.
Thank you for sharing that, Nashira. I'd love to read Alaja's comment. She says her relationship with money has been pretty overwhelming lately. I wasn't raised with the best financial advice, so right now I'm really learning everything on my own. Trying to learn how to invest, along with trying to pay off student loan debt, along with having 4 children. It has been, needless to say, all pretty frustrating and overwhelming, basically. So as we're talking about naming your feelings with
Yeah.
naming your feelings and doing an internal diagnosis, and step one, looking at the actual figures, what maybe advice would you give Delasia if she was your client?
I think she's doing just great, just getting started. So, something simple like this, you look at the feelings behind the comment. So, the feelings around, she wasn't raised, right? And so that may come with something like disappointment, or it sucks that I wasn't raised around great financial advice to help me. And seeing that I'm overwhelmed. And so now that you know what's going on inside, you have to start to think about what's a priority now, right? Because once you get your finances out in front of you, right? You stop
Mhm.
avoiding maybe perhaps the parts you don't want to see, and you're looking at everything you own and everything you owe. Really thinking about what's a priority to tackle. So I'm hearing you have 4 babies that you're raising and you want to be able to steward them well, right? And so is it first handling that and then tackling student loans and then saving? Really thinking about what's a priority, because that would help us determine how do we help alleviate those feelings of stress, maybe perhaps disappointment, maybe perhaps all those other frustrating feelings that may be getting in the way of you actually accomplishing these goals.
Mm.
So I hope that helps put it together, how the first two interact, knowing the feelings and stuff, that the emotions that's going on first, and then now taking a look at everything so that we can start to determine what's a priority before we start setting some financial goals.
Yeah, and you know, similar to Delage, I'm sure many of us have had a similar upbringing, that we weren't raised with the best financial advice. Our parents didn't know how to properly handle their finances, so that just um, went over into our experience as children. And you know, I recently did like a self-limiting belief exercise, and my thought around money is that it's slim.
Yeah.
It's lacking. So if we have that feeling or that belief that it's slim or it's lacking, then that's going to play out. How is that going to play out in our external environment? So could you talk a little bit about that, and share how like our internal perspective of money then plays out in our, in external world, in our, physical actions? Like for me, because I believe that money is slim or it's lacking, whenever I do get money, I tend to overspend. Like I'm the spender, because I want to be cohesive with my internal belief that it's lacking. So right, I have to get rid of it in order to match that. And that's a really an unhealthy relationship with money. And I recognize that. So how does one sort of, I guess, reprogram or rewire to realize, actually money, my husband's like, money's in abundance. There's people who are millionaires and billionaires, right? It's not slim. That is not true, right?
Yeah.
But that's just what I saw growing up. And that's what I now believe as an adult. And as a business owner, I really see that affecting even how I grow my business. I have plenty of clients, potential clients, but I'm like, don't pay me. It's almost like, don't pay me. I don't want your money. And I'll just give free advice, and I'll be okay with that, because that's consistent with my view and internal view of money.
Yeah. I think what you said is, I've talked to so many people who they also have this perspective, especially people who are still in their early stages of entrepreneurship. So first off, you've already identified perhaps what your money beliefs are.
Mm.
And beliefs are just that. They're beliefs, your own personal beliefs. They may not be facts, right? So
Correct.
your household, your husband has such a separate money belief, but for you, you've identified what yours are. Now, one of the exercises I do with people is, yes, we understand what our beliefs are, and there's tons of work that takes over the course of a few periods of conversations to help you change what those beliefs may be. A lot of people in the industry call that mindset work, and I get that. But one of the things I would recommend is really starting to think about what you value long term. And the reason why I say what you value, because once you understand and you have identified what
Mhm.
you value, what's important to you, you can then start to determine, because those beliefs don't go away right away. They just don't disappear. And even if you do mindset work, sometimes they still creep up. And so you really want to start to say, okay, well, what do I value as an individual? I
Mhm.
know you a little bit more personally. We've been working together for quite some time in terms of, I've actually been your client and we've gotten to know each other. And I know that you're a woman, a godly woman. So your faith is at the forefront of everything. And also family. You have those really strong values that show up in your conversations and when you work with people.
Mhm.
So when you start to think about how you spend, they really don't align with what you value. There's such a huge disconnect, because as a woman of faith, that you believe that you are called to walk in abundance. That doesn't mean that you are called to be like a millionaire.
Right.
It means that you are called to walk in the abundance that you've been created for. And
Right.
there's also that family aspect. And so aligning yourself with what your family goals are between you and your husband. And so those are the two things that you value. And when you look at the behaviors because of the core beliefs,
Exactly.
there's some sort of disalignment. And again, that brings us back to this cycle of feeling stress and disappointment and
Exactly.
disalignment. Incongruency is a word that is used in the financial therapy industry because it's not what you really want, and what you're saying that's important to you, you're not really doing. Think about you're talking from a perspective of a business owner, but when you think about it from an employee standpoint, there may be some professionals on the call, and they may be spending in order to look good for their profession, right? If you're a very high value profession, you may need to dress a certain way, own a certain type of car. And so when you think about that, you may be spending even before it comes into your account. And so you're living way above your means. And that may not be how you value life. And so now you're starting to have this trickle cycle, this trickle effect of disappointment, these feelings, getting paid, spending more than you have, and then dealing with the aftermath of that. And so those are some of the things you want to be aware of. I told you guys in the beginning, the name of my business is called Breaking Cycles, because once you start to become aware of the identity and the patterns and the cycles, for some of us who grew up in a family where that's all they knew is, my parents were immigrants, and I honor just their work ethic. They were some of the hardest workers that I know. When I think about it, they lived off survival. They came to America with this idea that they were going to work really hard to change their family's tree, to change their family's story.
Wow.
And when you think about it, but they were doing it out of survival. There was nothing else to further, show us something different and teach us something different besides what that survival looked like. And so I had made the decision that I was going to break the cycle, because when I got into corporate, it became all about working really, really, really hard to show some sort of success. And so that's a great area to be aware of, is what we value. What do you value as an individual? Maybe coming up with your top 10 or top 5 values to really start to think about, okay, this is what my beliefs may be right now, but what do I value?
Right. Wow. I have a guest who says she can't get into the event too, so I'm trying to troubleshoot that as well.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate what you shared, Nashira, and I did ask, what for our audience who was listening, tuned in, what was their, mindset growing up around money? Was it in abundance or was it in lack? Like you described your parents being really hard workers, and so that carried over into your corporate work experience, that like I have to work really, really hard for money in order to get even enough money. Not necessarily in abundance either. And how that's now, you recognize that and then dove into educating yourself. And Nashira's journey too is that she went from, I believe it was at $60,000 in debt, to a 6-figure net worth. And there's many of us, right, that's it seems like a far away goal, right? To be able to pay off debt, like Delasia was saying, pay off her student loan debt. I'm in a similar place. There's millions of students out there, graduates who have tons of student loan debt, and they're just really trying to make it, maybe not even using their degree, just trying to make it to survive versus thriving, like you said. As children of God, knowing that He is our ultimate provider, and that we can live with a mindset of abundance versus of lack.
Yeah.
The incongruency. So step 2 is actually looking at the figures like you mentioned, but then step 3 is acceptance.
Yeah. So once you figure out what your values are, right, and what do I value as, just as a person, right? What do I value? It's really starting to say, now we can incorporate a little bit of financial therapy. And so I won't go too deep into the steps of what they are, but they're, the next step would be acceptance, right? So accept the thoughts and feelings that you had. In the beginning, you had to really sit there and adjust. Maybe I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed.
Exactly.
There's some anger, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. And so really just accepting the thoughts, feelings that you're having at that moment. I know for some people, acceptance sounds really hard because you're like, I don't want to accept what I'm going through. I don't want to accept that I'm having those core beliefs. And you immediately want to start to fight them or change them. And I get that. And for some people that may work, but for others, especially clients that I work with, that moment to just pause and to just accept what's there is enough. It's enough to just literally alleviate the tension that they may be experiencing at that moment, because you can take that moment and start to make a decision and it be reactive, right? It means you're now frustrated, you're going to go shop, you're going to open up that app. It may not be the decision that you make. And so really just taking a moment to pause, to accept the thoughts and things that is there, it's really sometimes just enough to get you through that moment.
Accept your feelings. And so how many of us maybe really struggle with even accepting our feelings, and more like beating ourselves up? Like maybe we do overspend, or we, and we beat ourselves up or feel guilty or a bit, resentful. Like, why did I do that? Or why did I make that poor financial choice? Right. So that those types of negative feelings and response probably doesn't help necessarily. It maybe further perpetuates that feelings of condemnation. Like, it's almost happening. Actually, it's happening on a subconscious level. I mean, wouldn't you agree, Nashira? I mean, a lot of these beliefs that are from our childhood are being played out on a subconscious level, which is deeper than even on a conscious level. So when we're going out there, what are some things that like our audience can even ask themselves before making a big purchase, or any purchases, as part of the acceptance?
Yeah. Well, here's two great ones that I do it myself is, what am I thinking and what am I feeling? For anyone here who is, for a parent, perhaps like myself, sometimes I see something that I think my kid,
sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. I think about some of the things that my kids would love, right? And I could be in the moment, and then a sale comes up, and I'm like, I just want to get it for them, And oftentimes it's okay if I have planned to spend a certain amount of money on them. But there's other times where I just have to think, oh, what am I thinking? And what am I feeling? A lot of my past money core beliefs came from being a single mom and raising my kids by myself, thinking I had to overcompensate with purchases in order for them to feel this sense of love. And that wasn't the case. Really, what I needed to do is just skip the other part and just go straight to the love. And so just taking a moment sometimes to pause. Maybe if you're having a bad day, you have a colleague that's annoying you, or, you're just, something's going on. And now you want to automatically cope. You want to feel better. A great way to just stop and say, what am I thinking? And what am I feeling? And then to accept what's there. Before you try to go change anything, just to fully accept the thoughts and feelings that are with you at the moment.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you for that. I think it's such a foundational component of the healing journey, as to accept your feelings around money and not feel condemned, right? And a lot of my audience is faith-based, so there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus, right? But there is conviction, and there is light that's that the Lord shines in us to show us where we need healing. Yes. So I think that really directly relates to our faith, and allowing God the opportunity to heal areas that maybe are preventing His blessing, that are preventing Him from really providing the way He wants to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so then we'll move on to commitment, right? And so I mentioned to you really figuring out what you value. So, like Cassie just said, a lot of you are faith-based entrepreneurs or faith-based professionals on this. And so really committing to what you value, to moving towards what you value. So if Cassie's saying, I am, I value my faith. And so before she goes and spends, because now she just got this large lump sum payment, or clients, check has cleared, there's really this opportunity after she sits there and deals with what she's thinking and what she's feeling to choose what she's going to commit to doing next. And that commitment starts with what she values. I commit to, doing, whatever she's saving for. I commit to taking my finances and doing X, or maybe perhaps giving a 10% of it. I commit to taking this action next. And that commitment part is just you reaffirming all the time. As Christians, we have to commit every day, right, to walking this walk and talking the talk. And so it's the same thing in our finances. When we understand what we're thinking and feeling, we may not be feeling the best at the moment, but after accepting, I can still choose to commit to moving towards what I value instead of going off and just trying to cope.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that segue. It seems so natural, right? Once you've accepted your feelings or acknowledged them, then you move into a place of committing towards alignment with your core values, whether it is your faith or family, or whatever other core values that you really want to honor in every area of your life, and especially with your finances. So just like Nashira was saying, for me, whenever I get paid, from a client, I definitely want to tithe, and I do tithe for my business, right? Like a tenth, of my income, and that's not something that everyone does, but that is something I do feel called to do and to honor the Lord. Like He lets us keep 90%, and He's only asking for 10%, and honoring Him, knowing that this is going to be something that helps to build a body, or maybe build a church building, or provide for the saints that are in need. I don't know, but just trusting that the Lord. But that is a way to one step to properly steward our finances, is to honor the Lord by giving a tenth of our income. So I would love to hear other ways that that our audience does that as well, as far as habits they've put in place to be in alignment with their core values versus, like Nashira said earlier, being incongruent or lacking congruency. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. So anything else about commitment for you, Nashira? Yeah.
Not so much commitment, but this is great, just easy to segue into the next part, which is just to take action. A commitment is something that you make to hold yourself accountable. I mean, if you have someone who's your accountability buddy, who can help you with your commitment, and you have to call them and be like, okay, I'm committing despite what I feel, I'm going to commit to doing X instead of, Y. So there is that commitment part. Commitments are very powerful, right? When we are committed to doing something, it's a powerful action. And so no matter how many times you need to do it throughout the day, making that commitment is such a powerful statement for yourself. And then there's that next step, which is take action, right? So it's not good enough to just accept and commit. It's also good to take action. Do the thing you said you were going to do, and to take action. Go in that direction, right? So for example, I'm just going to give you just a little makeup story, right? Let's say you have a business owner, they're part of a business group, and one is generating income, she's killing it in her business, and then the other, he may not so much be doing that. And so he's getting rejections, and that's starting to take a toll on him. He's not generating income, his family's depending on him. And now you think about this person who just, let's say, for example, heard that person share they got a $10,000, $20,000 contract. He hears that, and now he's feeling something, right? He's feeling a certain kind of way, and his automatic response is normally to go and cope. But he now has these tools and techniques. He can just stop himself, right? Take a moment, scale back, and just say, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? And his thoughts may be, I'm a failure. My business is no good. I'm not enough to support my family. And I should just quit. I should give up. And then next would be, what he's feeling. Maybe inside he's, maybe his hands is getting sweaty because now he feels he needs to make a reaction. His stomach's queasy. He's frustrated. He doesn't want to interact with the group. He wants to leave the group, right? These are now what these thoughts are causing him to feel, right? Like, I'm going to leave the group, and now he's frustrated. He doesn't want to answer no one's phone call. And this is all could happen in a matter of just like an hour group session, right?
Wow.
And so then if he would stop to accept those thoughts that he's thinking and feeling, he could commit to what he values. And so let's say, for example, let's say he's not a faith-based entrepreneur, but he values family, right? And now he's like, I value my family. I value financial freedom.
Right.
I value unity.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so now when he's thinking about that, let's say instead of perhaps going to now go shop, or maybe shopping is not his coping technique, maybe it's going to his favorite spot, and now he's going to spend money there because, or he needs a new tool or a new gadget in order to cope, to feel to contradict what he's feeling about himself and his business.
Right.
But instead now he can commit, okay, I believe financial freedom. So maybe instead of not talking to this woman who's succeeding in her business, maybe I can ask her to a cup of coffee to maybe generate ideas. Maybe I could actually, reach out for help. Maybe I could, because now I'm committed to my family, financial freedom, and unity, instead of doing all the normal things and having the negative behavior, I'm actually going to commit to what I value. And coming up with how you're going to take action towards what you value is way important, because it's proactive. It's not reactive. And then going to actually take action to do that. And for some people, that's where they stop. They commit to it, but they don't take the action. So taking action for him could be, okay, I've sent an email to her like, hey, man, your success is doing so well, and here's where I am at. I'm not doing so well. Maybe there's a conversation we can have, and you can help me generate ideas or strategies, or maybe I need to make a pivot, and maybe you could recommend a coach or a business professional to help me. And then taking action is, I'm not going to go spend money on what doesn't mean. I need love. And so I'm going to go to my family, and I'm going to go surround myself in love and my family and support, instead of going and coping in another way, because my family is what's important to me, and financial freedom. So instead of spending to go feel better, I'm going to actually go to what makes me feel real better.
Wow.
And so that's just a way for everyone on the call to kind of think about how this can play out. It can go a real negative way, and it may sound simple, but when you have these negative behaviors over and over and over and over again, and for some of you, it may not be so deep. It may be light, like, no, I always have to go do my nails and my toes. It doesn't matter if I earn income, but just because you need a way to make you feel better, or a way to cope with what's going on in your life right now, I want you to think about that. Like, how long will you spend either in debt or without reaching your saving goals because you haven't dealt with the way you're thinking and feeling and taking action to what matters to you?
That's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Nashira. Taking action, like, I love that you're taking action. Tips were really practical, and it could be, like you mentioned, reaching out for an informational meeting or taking them to coffee just to brainstorm ideas and how they can grow their business, because you see a fellow business owner who's so successful, but you're struggling, and perhaps there's definitely probably some of that subconscious or that internal blockages that are preventing you from really laying hold of the success that you is so available to you. It's probably more than likely something, mindset or internal, that is really, preventing you. So being able to just ask for help. I think we forget that, especially being like an online. It's just like everyone's doing it like on their own, you feel, and you're isolated. But reminding, I feel like you help to break that barrier. Like, yeah, we can ask. Like today, if our audience members wants to reach out to you and ask, like, hey, Nashira, like, I'd love to work with you, or I'd like to know more, or maybe you can point me in the right direction, or whatever that might be. How more so now more than ever do we need that community and support to grow ourselves. So that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there are any of our audience members has any questions for Nashira on any of the steps we went through. The 5 steps. Maybe we can briefly review them. I know there was a lot of info there, and some maybe jumped in a little later. So I'd love for you to just review it, Nashira.
Yeah. So the first step was to just perform a diagnosis, right?
Mm-hmm.
To really start to take account of what you're thinking and feeling when it comes to your money.
Mm-hmm.
The second step was to take an account of what is actually happening financially, right? What do you owe? What do you own? And then we moved on to, and in that process also was identifying your values.
Mm.
So, and then we moved on to acceptance, right? Accepting your thoughts and your feelings. Then we moved to commitment. So, committing to move towards what you value.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one was take action.
Take action.
Yeah.
If you have any questions around putting the steps in the chat, if you guys have any questions about any of those steps or need further expansion, please let us know. But those steps are really powerful and really digestible. Nashira, are there any we have people in the audience who are right in the midst of, like Delasia said, doing it on their own and trying to figure out, maybe they don't have currently the funds to invest in themselves and their business, right? What would be the next step, or for them to build the wealth and start getting out of debt? Where would you direct them if they're not yet maybe ready to make that investment?
Yeah, I would say, I guess it's tricky because there's such a large amount of people, like, and you can't really understand. But I think that maybe perhaps it really could be just getting a professional advice. I think that sometimes we think it's always about, I have to go pay,
Right.
$100 something to go talk to a professional, but maybe perhaps using a consultation. So I offer 15-minute consultations, and most financial coaches or counselors or even other financial advisors, most offer a consultation that can help you even start to think about what would be next step. In the case of, I believe her name was Delasia, in her case, it could really just be sitting down thinking about what is a priority right now. I mean, there's so many things pulling for your attention, right? It's even just when it comes to finances. If you think about it for a moment, it may be, the bills. Maybe, we're on the 6th and some people still haven't paid the first of the month's rent. And then it may be, that item that you're saving for that's coming up in the summer, or that vacation or the trip or your child's summer camp, or, oh my gosh, there's just so many things, right? The student loan payments that are going to start kicking back in, the investment you want to make in your business, there's so many. And it's really figuring out what's a priority, because if you think about it, just thinking of all those items that I mentioned, I already feel a sense of overwhelm of just naming them. And so when you think about all the things that are pulling for your finances, what's a priority right now? Maybe perhaps you are in this paycheck to paycheck cycle, and that could be the first step. Or maybe you have fluctuating income, and just knowing what you need in order to survive a month could be your first step. But a consultation with a professional could help you start to think about that, or just some time alone, maybe some time, with a finance book, or diving into. I know you mentioned before the call started that you started reading a book after attending one of my master class last week. And so for everyone, it's different, but finding out exactly what's a priority to you right now is a really huge step.
Yeah, and that book was Get Good with Money by Tiffany. I forgot her last name. She is the creator of Budgetnista. I just started that book, and it's just sharing her journey and her upbringing. Is a big part of how she was so frugal and able to master her finances at the age of 25. But then she also experienced some real serious, financial mistakes that got her into a lot of debt, just being and how she got out of that by using what she learned, growing up and seeing that pattern being modeled by her parents. So I think it's so been really helpful. So that's, you can get something on Kindle, a book for $10 or $15. Like you said, it doesn't have to be necessarily hundreds or thousands of dollars yet, to invest in a maybe, financial coaching program, but that is something that would provide that next level of insight and plan or strategy to build wealth and get out of debt. So I'm right there with you guys too. I'm in the same boat as far as student loan debt, thousands of dollars of student loan debt for a degree that I currently am not using. I think that's like 75 or 72% of U.S. graduates are currently not, using the degree that they went to school for and have all this debt. So making a plan. I went to Financial Peace University. I love to go again. I know you shared your story about starting and stopping it too. It was a great foundation. I think starting to track your where is it going, right? Because it goes every month, and just finding out knowledge is power, right? Finding out where is it going, you know what I mean? Like we accept that we spend a lot on eating out, and my husband's like, well, it makes me happy, so I'm okay like spending $200 on eating out a month because that's something that I enjoy. So it's not a guilt, right, trip. It could be, but for us, it's like, well, we enjoy eating out. We enjoy our date nights. So anyways, so you have to, it's all on an individual from like basis to base, I think the other day you shared during your live that you were like at, I think 1,000 and spending for groceries. I think the first quarter, I believe that's, what you said. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not that much at all. Like we spend like, close to 150 on groceries a week. So that's like 600 a month. So anyways, there's like no right judgment and like, where and how you spend, but like you mentioned, taking action and committing to aligning your money habits with your core values, and how are they potentially in misalignment, and how can you get them into alignment, and your spouse or partner might have totally different beliefs around money, and how, I guess that's one tip maybe you can provide, like how do you, find a common ground, or, have that conversation if you guys are so maybe different, which is probably usually the case.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the tips that I have given working with couples is, because it's really hard, right? Like who knows who's right or who's wrong?
Exactly.
Whether both people are contributing to that income, to the household income or not. It's really a partnership, right? We're on the same. And so it's really, and you said the words while you were speaking before, but thinking about that, there is no judgment. Right. So if we go into and actually have the conversation, you'll be surprised. You'll get on a call like this and people have not, you talk about another topic and people have tons to say, right? Because one, sometimes talking about money is very painful. And two, it's very personal. And so you don't want to share, you don't want to talk about it because of all the thoughts and feelings that come up. So it's easy for you to listen, but if you can show up without judgment and actually have the conversation, you start to get to listen better to what your spouse, your partner, your roommate, your children, what their ideas about money is. And if it's right or wrong, is not for you to say at that moment. It's just for you to listen, to get a perspective, to see what works. So for example, like your husband, he said food is $200 for food. That's great. Yeah. Like professionals used to tell me, if you take coffee out your budget or decrease, and they would make all these beautiful, colorful charts. And I would be like, no, I need coffee to survive. Everyone has to live. And so if everyone's going to live, I'm going to have the coffee. But when I did my values, one of my values is community. And so when I think about that, taking a mentor out for coffee, walking a coworker, taking a break just to connect with that person. It wasn't so much just about the coffee, even though I consider myself a professional coffee drinker. It was also just about that moment to connect with someone, to just hear a colleague out. And so for me, coffee couldn't come out my budget. Yes, I can set a boundary, around what should be done, but it wasn't coming out because it was something that was important to me. And I still paid it off. I still paid off $60,000 in debt, and I still had coffee in my budget. And so it may not be what you give up that someone else is telling you, but you can listen to your husband and say, okay, $200 for food, that's great. But
Right.
where could we do better that we're not
Exactly.
overspending? And
Right.
that's where you can come in and you
Yes.
can contribute and offer, because you both want your needs to be met around a good, healthy boundary. And maybe
Exactly.
not every month is 200, maybe some is 150, so that you can meet
Exactly.
another need in the budget.
Wow.
But really just having the conversation, no judgment, listening to each other is a great place for you to start.
Love that. Love that. And so we didn't recommend any apps or budgeting tools or softwares, which I know there's plenty of out there, and you've probably tried all sorts of different apps too. But yeah, I've tried YNAB. You need a budget. Every dollar I'm currently, using on and off. But there's just you have to create a system that works for you. My husband and I typically just print out like Dave Ramsey's monthly cash flow plan, and we just write out every month what we project is going to go in there. There's going to be obviously most utilities and bills are pretty consistently the same price, so you could argue like, right, why are we going to do this every month when it's going to be the same numbers? But I think just having that habit of doing it every month and looking at it last month and projecting for the future, and just having like a set time, like we're going to sit down for an hour
Yeah.
and really take a look at our finances. I think is just helpful, whatever that looks like for you. If it's a weekly thing, if it's a once a month thing, like whatever works for you and your family, like devising something that's just not like pulling teeth. It can be like pulling teeth, like,
Yeah.
doing a budget if you're like, oh gosh, like I don't want to do this. But like you
Yeah.
mentioned, that's part of taking action and being empowered to know
Yeah.
where your money is going and having it work for you versus you working so hard for it.
I agree. You need a system. You need a system in place. There are tons of apps. I've tried a lot. I think what's worked the best for me and my family is Personal Capital. But we use that alongside a Google spreadsheet we designed that works best for us. You mentioned something about budgeting. So I don't encourage any really of my clients to budget. What I encourage is for them to track. And so for some people, a budget can help you. For me, it just didn't work. But what works for us is to track our finances. And the difference is that we don't wait to the end of the month to kind of see what we did. We're literally weekly assessing what we did. And so it's more, we catch things a little bit quicker than waiting to the end of the month to kind of see what we did to plan for the next month. And that's just what works for us. Some people get a budget and they're okay. Remember, we talked about this healing your relationship with money. And for some people, maybe perhaps your prescription is a budget.
Wow.
For me, they kept prescribing a budget and that just didn't work. And so when I track, I'm also basically doing the internal work. What was happening this week? What was I thinking? What was I feeling? What was I experiencing? And then kind of, making sure that in that did I commit to moving and taking action? Because if sometimes that extra trip wasn't planned for. But if I did, then, at least I know I was in some sort of alignment. And how could I prepare a little bit better? How could I understand maybe perhaps there's something that's triggering me way more than I want to be triggered? Think about the influence, the circle that you're around. And sometimes that has to be part of your system, thinking about who's affecting your finances. Now that we're out and we're able to go outside more, is going out to lunch with that friend too much causing you to, if it's hanging out with, certain kind of people, or maybe you're now with your family again and they're struggling, and going around them makes you want to give more than you prepared to give. And so those are some of the systems that you want to think of, not just like having the budget or even just an app, is also incorporating this sort of internal work that could help you see the whole entire picture.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it really sounds like a holistic approach, to healing your relationship with money that's really rooted in your feeling and acceptance of whatever background you've come from, and starting to take action and commit to aligning your money habits with your core values and beliefs, so that you are congruent, like you said, and there isn't this internal misalignment with how you spend and what your beliefs are. And I think I really appreciate that, which is why it's what you call yourself a financial, therapist versus just, a financial coach or consultant or advisor, which often is attached of you're selling insurance. So I really appreciate you coming on the show. If you guys have any questions for Nashira, you can feel free to message her on LinkedIn. But before we go, I would love to have Nashira share where you can reach her, how you can work with her. Any places that our audience can find you.
Yeah, I think the best place is LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is sort of home to me. I know everyone has their preferred platform.
Yeah.
LinkedIn has been my, hence seeing why I have my wonderful LinkedIn coach, Cassandra, here. So LinkedIn has been my home. I do have a website where you can literally either take an assessment to kind of think about what your financial health is, or you could actually just reach out to me directly from the website, which is breaking-cycles.com. This, you mentioned, Cassandra, oh man, we got to do the budget. Man, when people walk away from me, I want them to feel the complete opposite.
Yes.
Yes, there is a space where you have to deal with the painful issues around money, but it doesn't have to stay that way. Financially healthy and financially resilient doesn't have to make you feel like this is the worst thing you have to do in your day. Kind of like how my kids think about washing dishes. Like I haven't figured out how to help them with that, but I have figured out how to help people approach their finances and feel more joy and to feel hope and to feel there's a possibility that things could be different and actually start to experience that difference. So feel free to reach out to me on, like I said, on the website. There's a link where you can directly message me. I read all of them. And then there's also a survey where you can take an assessment score to kind of figure out, well, what is my financial health? Like, what is the behaviors that I have been having? And you can take that score and receive a response back where we can get connected. I also have a new program that's coming out in a few weeks called Financial Success from the Inside Out. Yeah, just exactly what we've talked about today, really feeling that financial success, not just externally, but also internally. And it's a group program it's about 2 months long, and it's filled with education materials, but also this one-to-one mentoring in a group setting that allows you to really start to dig with some of the topics that come up. Never too deep, but also always deep enough for you to move on and commit to taking action towards your next step.
That sounds amazing, Nashira. And you mentioned it starts in a few weeks. Do you have a set date yet? You're still working out those?
Yes. I'm still working out the dates, but I will definitely keep this post pinned, and so that I could share more details later on. I do know that the community that I have set up for the group is going to be open in a few days. Now, the community portion of it, I actually built a community outside of social media because I wanted people to have a dedicated space to work on finances. Finances is not something you should spend all day on. And so if you and then social media could distract you. So I've built a private community, and I'm going to be opening the doors to invite people to come into the community within the next few days. And so I'll also go ahead and share that information with you guys in the comments.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much, Nashira, for taking time out of your day to share these incredible life-changing tips on how to heal your relationship with money. I know there's so much more to come, and our audience can potentially work with you in this upcoming program for more one-on-one support and advice. Is there a wait list or anything for the group, or would you prefer? Yeah, for your program. Yes.
Yeah, so right now there is actually I can share a nice sales page with you guys. We
Okay.
can put that right after this so you can get an idea of what's included in the program. And if something sparks your interest, again, you can just reach out. We can jump on a call to make sure it's the right fit. But like Cassandra said, for some people, it may not be. And so just a quick
Mm,
15-minute call could help you determine what would be your next step or what professional should you be speaking to.
I like
Some
that.
people are not hurt, they're injured. And so maybe financial professional is not what you need, and maybe it's a mental health therapist. And that's something that we learn
Yeah.
to identify. So there's a difference between hurt and injured. And so just making sure we get you to the right place is important for us.
Love that. Thank you so much again, Nashira. We appreciate you all for joining us this afternoon. Until next time, keep grinding in grace.